Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Vaibhav Jyotsna Srivastava, and with me is R.S. Raghu, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. The headlines. Basic countries decry the lack of a serious approach to climate finance at COP26. Delhi Regional Security Dialogue on Afghanistan to be held on Wednesday. China and Pakistan will not attend the NSA-level talks. WHO and the UNICEF kick off polio vaccination campaign in Afghanistan. US reopens land and air borders after 20 months. India's concept of the Indo-Pacific is inclusive in nature, says Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla at the Goa Maritime Conclave. President Ramnath Kovind confers Padma Awards for the year 2020. And in the T20 World Cup, India beat Namibia by 9 wickets in Dubai in their last league match. As India created history by administering 100 crore vaccine doses against COVID-19, All India Radio salutes all the doctors, nurses, other frontline workers, and all those who got vaccinated and made this possible. Even though the country has achieved this feat, we caution our listeners that the battle against COVID is not yet over. We appeal to our listeners to get fully vaccinated at the earliest and also help others get vaccinated. During the festival season, please follow these 3 simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact the national helpline numbers 011-2397-8046 and 1075. And now the news in detail. The basic group of countries have lamented the lack of a serious approach to climate finance at the joint stocktake plenary at COP26 at Glasgow. In a statement delivered on behalf of the basic countries, Brazil, South Africa, India and China, Ms. Richa Sharma said that this will jeopardize the enhanced mitigation and adaptation ambition as well as net zero pledges of parties. She said that the basic countries support strong, credible domestic mitigation actions by developed countries, parties without undue reliance on cheap offsets to maintain their high carbon, unsustainable lifestyles. She added that the grouping supports markets that are credible and have high environmental integrity and strong non-market approaches as well. Ms. Sharma also highlighted that cover decisions of COP26 should remain within the confines of the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement and be fully consistent with its guiding principles of equity and common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities. With the ongoing UN Climate Summit, or the Conference of Parties COP26 in Glasgow, All India Radio brings you a ready reckoner. Under the COP26 Explainer series, we will bring for you daily the terms and concepts in use during the conference. Today, we will talk about energy efficiency. The word energy efficiency means using less energy to perform the same task. It eliminates the waste of energy, reduces greenhouse gases emissions, and the energy imports and lowers the costs on a household and economy-wide level. AIR News spoke to Country Director of RTI International India, Shalabh Srivastava, on its implications.
Energy efficiency is the unsung hero of climate fight. In its most basic form, energy efficiency is about reducing energy consumption in the industry, offices, homes, and everywhere else. There are multiple levers, tools, and technologies that can be deployed for it, such as better insulation to optimize cooling and heating, natural lighting, right-sizing equipment, and tariffs to influence consumer behavior. Energy efficiency in buildings is the largest opportunity as they are responsible for about 40% of the global energy consumption and about 1/3 of the greenhouse gas emissions.
On the issue of how can India benefit from energy efficiency, Mr. Srivastava said sustainable investments, green designs and collaborations hold the key.
These sustainable investments are a win-win as they benefit both the consumers and the governments. India has significant opportunity to integrate energy efficiency in the design and planning of built infrastructure. Collaboration between the utilities, regulators and customers will enable an accelerated deployment of energy efficient technologies and ensure India's continued leadership on climate mitigation.
Welcoming India's announcements at the COP26 summit in Glasgow, Professor Lord Stern of Brentford of the London School of Economics and Political Science said that it was a very significant moment for the summit, with Prime Minister Modi pledging stronger action by India on climate change with 5 new targets. The Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change tweeted a video of Lord Stern saying Prime Minister Modi's speech at COP26 pledging strong action by India with 5 new targets can deliver on both economic developments and climate change.
A very special moment in Indian history and indeed history of the world. The beginning of a huge era of opportunity and innovation and investment and sustainable, resilient, inclusive growth.
Earlier in a post, Lord Stern had urged the rich world to respond to Prime Minister Modi's challenge to deliver a strong increase in international climate finance. The International Monetary Fund had also welcomed India's announcement at the COP26 summit on new targets to increase reliance on renewables and reduce the carbon intensity of its economy, including to adopt a net zero target by 2070. The Delhi Regional Security Dialogue, convened by India over the situation in Afghanistan, will be held in New Delhi on the 10th of November. The dialogue will be held at the level of National Security Advisors or Secretaries of Security Councils and will be chaired by India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. A report.
The Delhi Regional Security Dialogue on Afghanistan will witness an expanded participation of Iran, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyz Republic, Russia, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan, who will all be represented by the National Security Advisors or Secretaries of the Security Councils. India had also invited Pakistan and China for the meeting. However, both the countries are not participating. China said that it is unable to attend the meeting due to scheduling issue, but it is open for dialogue with India and Afghanistan multilaterally and bilaterally. Official sources said there will be discussions over security situation in Afghanistan, radicalization, extremism, drug production and trafficking. Threat emanating from military weapons left behind in Afghanistan will also be part of discussions. The meeting will also deliberate on issues of humanitarian assistance in Afghanistan. The first 2 editions of the dialogue were hosted by Iran in 2018 and 2019. The high-level dialogue will review the security situation in the region arising from recent developments in Afghanistan. It will deliberate upon measures to address the relevant security challenges and support the people of Afghanistan in promoting peace, security and stability. India has traditionally enjoyed close and friendly ties with the people of Afghanistan and has called for a unified international response to address the security and humanitarian challenges facing Afghanistan. The forthcoming meeting is a step in that direction. Nishit Kumar for World News.
Meanwhile, the Minister of External Affairs has said that the National Security Advisor, NSA, Ajit Kumar Doval, has no official account on Twitter. MEA spokesperson Arindam Bagchi advised caution against imposter or fake accounts under the name of NSA. The World Health Organization, WHO, and the United Nations Children's Agency kicked off a polio vaccination campaign in Afghanistan on Monday. This is the first nationwide campaign to fight the disease in 3 years. The Taliban-run Afghan Public Health Ministry announced on Sunday the start of a 4-day nationwide polio vaccination campaign aimed at inoculating children under the age of 5. For the past 3 years before taking control of Afghanistan, the Taliban had barred UN-organized vaccination teams from doing door-to-door campaigns in parts of the country under their control. Because of the ban and ongoing fighting, some 3.3 million children over the past 3 years have not been vaccinated. The Taliban's acting public health minister, Dr. Qalandar Ibad, said, "Without any doubt, polio is a disease that, without treatment, will either kill our children or cause them with permanent disability. So in this case, the only way is to implement the vaccination." Afghanistan and neighboring Pakistan are the only countries in the world where polio remains endemic, and the disease can cause partial paralysis in children.
The United States has reopened its land and air borders on Monday to foreign visitors fully vaccinated against COVID-19. With this, the U.S. has ended close to 20 months of restrictions on travel from around the globe. Foreign national air travelers to the United States from today will be required to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19. The travelers are required to provide proof of vaccination status prior to boarding an airplane to fly to the United States with only limited exceptions. For the purpose of entry into the United States, vaccines accepted will include those FDA approved or authorized, as well as vaccines with an emergency use listing EUL from the World Health Organization WHO. Covishield will be accepted for the purposes of entry into the United States since it has an EUL from the WHO. Fully vaccinated air travelers will still be required to show documentation of a pre-departure negative viral test from a sample taken within 3 days of travel to the United States before boarding. That includes all travelers, US citizens, lawful permanent residents and foreign nationals. Meanwhile, in Germany, the number of new coronavirus infections per 1 lakh per 100,000 people over the last 7 days soared to slightly over 200 on Monday. This is a record since the beginning of the pandemic in the country, according to figures published by Germany's Robert Koch Institute.
India's Foreign Secretary, Mr. Harshvardhan Shringla, has said that the countries in the Indian Ocean region not just share geography and experience, but also partners in one of the most exciting economic transformations in history. Speaking at the Goa Maritime Conclave, Mr. Shringla underlined the security challenges posed by non-traditional threats and new technologies. Reiterating Prime Minister Narendra Modi's announcement at the G20 summit on India's plan to manufacture 5 billion vaccines in 2022, the Foreign Secretary said India is committed to supplying vaccines to its partners, including those in the region. On the Indo-Pacific, Mr. Shringla said that India's concept of the Indo-Pacific is inclusive in nature. He said it supports an approach that respects the right of freedom of navigation and overflight for all in the international seas. This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates around the clock, follow us on our Twitter handle @AIR News Alerts.
Welcome back to World News. In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on the crises in Afghanistan. In conversation are Anil Badva, a former diplomat, and Sanjay Jha, journalist.
After nearly 3 months, the Taliban took over of Afghanistan. Friends of Taliban have started saying that Afghanistan will shortly collapse into chaos unless international community acts rapidly. Mr. Badwa, Taliban came, suddenly, unexpectedly. Now we are seeing that they are really into big problem. Afghan's economy is collapsing. More than half its people may go hungry this winter. And, India has decided to send 50,000 MP as humanitarian help. What do you think? Where is Afghanistan headed to?
So I think the process which took place and unfolded in Afghanistan as the Taliban took over was something which was not anticipated by the international community. And it was thought at that point in time, as we all know in hindsight, that the Taliban would wait till a deadline which was set by the United States to leave and then gradually move in and also bring about a unified government in which there would be different factions from different communities, and women would be given some representation, and at the same time try and build consensus because they were coming back as Taliban 2.0 in order to become much more acceptable to the world. But the problem has been the control of Taliban 2.0 by Pakistan and by ISI in particular. We've seen, how the ISI has controlled the elements which are more inimical to United States, India and other countries. And obviously those who are closer to the Pakistani establishment have found place in this Taliban 2.0 government. In fact, some of the moderate leaders have been sidelined. None of the promises that were made by the Taliban representatives in Doha, which is called the Doha faction, have actually materialized. And that, therefore, has brought about a certain amount of disenchantment within the international community. The countries which are directly concerned with this issue now are Pakistan, which is saddled with this huge problem of looming refugee crisis, and China, which has backed its ally Pakistan and kept out countries like India from the negotiating process, and the consultative process. And this has led to a situation where the other countries are waiting and adopting a wait-and-watch attitude. UN Security Council resolution, which was passed under the chairmanship of India, clearly stated that the soil of Afghanistan must not be used for carrying out terror attacks against its neighbors. And to a certain extent, the Russians also believe that this should be the case going forward. So none of these countries have actually volunteered to jump into recognition of the Taliban regime. And of course, the assets of Afghanistan under this regime remain frozen, so they cannot be released under the conditions are met. Taliban has given no such promises because its agenda is driven by Pakistani ISI and the Pakistani Foreign Office nowadays. In fact, there have been 2 or 3 visits up and down. Another one is expected very shortly. But as to how Pakistan, without the assistance of China, is going to manage this crisis in Afghanistan is a very, very difficult question now. For the world community, the most important question is how to deal with the looming humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. And this will be what will be confronting the international community in the coming weeks and months.
Mr. Wadhwa, you rightly pointed out that the countries like Pakistan are also worried about worsening situation in Afghanistan. Pakistani establishment has obviously tried to control everything in Afghanistan. Foreign minister went there, the ISI chief went there. Now, so far in last 3 months, none of the Taliban leaders has come to Pakistan. There is a talk about Afghan interim foreign minister visiting Pakistan to reset bilateral ties high on agenda. Do you think the Pakistanis are getting the pinch of having organization and Taliban in their backyard, and now they need to reset the agenda like, okay, we need to keep a distance from them, otherwise we will also win the problem?
So yes, I think the Pakistani agenda from the very beginning has been to use Pakistani soil and the elements in Taliban 2.0, which are sympathetic to Pakistan, to create trouble and to foment terrorism from its soil directed against countries like India. There is no doubt about that. But the problem is that the Chinese are also very worried about what happens to their underbelly in Xinjiang. And therefore, their first and foremost demand is that those elements are brought to book by the Taliban 2.0 government. And in the process, we've had a situation where there is a certain amount of dissent and a certain amount of resentment amongst the current Taliban government in terms of reining in those elements because they would not like, others to dictate to them. As time goes by, Pakistan's hold on the elements and making sure that they are used for terrorist purposes will also decline in time because Pakistan is not the country which controls the purse strings. The money is going to come from other countries, and the other countries have clearly put forward conditionalities, including the Chinese. As Pakistan is not in a position by itself to help the Taliban economically or even in terms of food aid. Pakistan itself is reeling under an economic crisis, a political crisis, and it seems to me that they have taken up too much on their hands. Very difficult for them to ensure that the whole process goes in their favor the way they want it, and at the same time they are not affected by it. And that is why the Pakistani establishment is very keen to invite the Taliban leadership to Pakistan to ensure this happens, also to put this down on paper for whatever it is worth in order to ensure that they remain unaffected. And in the bargain, they would offer to talk to the rest of the world community, including UAE, Saudi Arabia, the Chinese, of course, and the Russians, to ensure that some amount of aid flows into Afghanistan. I doubt very much if the bank accounts of Afghanistan will be unfrozen by the United States given the current circumstances and given the fact there are no such promises which have been fulfilled which were made in the Doha negotiations.
You talked about U.S. not willing to allow the bank accounts of the Afghan government. Members of G20 group of major economies have recently met in Italy, and they have pledged to avert an economic catastrophe in Afghanistan. German Chancellor Angela Merkel said countries should not be allowed to descend into chaos. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said that we need to prioritize rights of the women and girls in Afghanistan, has even pledged £50 million. So in this, what is the role of the international community you see in the coming days for the Afghanistan?
The international community, unfortunately, has very little role unless the Taliban government play ball and unless they come up with a clear statement that they are going to respect and fulfill the demands of the Western countries and the larger international community.
Pakistan doesn't want any role for India in Afghanistan. But despite that, India's National Security Advisor is hosting a meeting of NSAs in the neighborhood, including Russia, on November 10th to discuss Afghanistan's future and how to deal with threats to security coming from the developments there. The exercise is to reform the consensus that after the pullout of US and NATO troops from Afghanistan, solutions to the crisis in Afghanistan must come from the region itself. China and Pakistan, which are two very important players in Afghanistan, have decided not to attend this conference, which is hosted by India. And they're trying to portray India as an anti-Taliban. The actual purpose is to, stabilize Kabul, etc. What do you think? Can we hope to get much success from this conference despite these two important players not attending it? Although India and our National Security Advisor has said that the conference is against radicalization there, not against Taliban as such. But do you think there can be some outcome from this conference?
Well, I don't think there was any expectation from the very beginning that the Pakistani NSA would be attending this conference because, as I said earlier, Pakistan does not want India to play any role whatsoever in the process in Afghanistan. And obviously, given the current situation on the border with China and the Pakistan-China collaboration on many issues, and that includes Afghanistan, of course, we would expect also the Chinese not to come into this conference. That does not mean that the others are unimportant, because you have very important players like Iran, like Russia, India. You also have the Central Asian states which border Afghanistan. Without their support, the Taliban government will be in difficulty. And I'm sure that there would be a positive way which will evolve going forward.
India has been one of the biggest contributors towards global efforts at reconstructing Afghanistan. In fact, it is the largest regional donor in Afghanistan and has contributed nearly $3 billion for infrastructure and institutional development. So why do you think Pakistan plays this perfidious role of not allowing any role? The common Afghan people want India to come and help them in building the country, in providing whatever they need for them. We see a lot of Afghanis coming to India for medical treatments. So they have a huge expectations from India. So what is that Pakistan has got against this? Is it like they fear that India will come and start stronger relationship with Afghanistan and that will create a problem for them?
Yes, that is the main fear, which is, of course, quite imaginary on various counts. The fact that Pakistan does not want any Indian influence in Afghanistan is well known, and that they've been trying for a very, very long time. During the previous governments in Afghanistan, which are democratic governments, we've seen that those governments have been very close to the Indian establishment. And obviously, they did not allow their soil to be used against India, especially for terrorist purposes, for hosting of terrorist camps, which the Pakistanis want to do, and to shift the terrorist camps on Afghanistan soil in order to avoid the scrutiny of the FATF, while at the same time pursuing the policy of covert action against India. And this will only succeed if you have a pliant government in Afghanistan which actually complies with the ISI.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Wadhwa.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jha.
President Ramnath Kovind presented the Padma Vibhushan Award to boxer MC Mary Kom this evening. He also honored former Mauritius President Anirudh Jugnauth and late seer of Pejavar Mat Vishvesha Tirtha Swami with the second highest civilian honor posthumously. Mr. Kovind presented the Padma Bhushan to Gandhian Krishnammal Jagannath, senior Jammu Kashmir leader Muzaffar Hussain Beg, veteran gynecologist from Ladakh Dr. Chering Landol, and business magnates Anand Mahindra and Venu Srinivasan. He also honored English and Odia author Manoj Das and former Union Minister and former Goa Chief Minister Manohar Parrikar with the Padma Bhushan posthumously. Here is the desk report.
Prominent personalities who were given Padma Shri include pulmonologist Digambar Behra, environmentalist Tulsi Gowda, singer Suresh Wadekar, TV series producer Ekta Kapoor, filmmaker Karan Johar, farmer and Sarpanch of Model Panchayat Popatrao Pawar, Satriya dancer Indra P.P. Bora, former hockey captain and coach M.P. Ganesh, bhajan singer and social worker Munna Master, and Chaiti Ghoda dancer Utsab Charandas. Convener of Bhopal Gas Pirit Mahila Udyog Sangathan, an advocacy group for victims, survivors and their families, Abdul Jabbar was honoured with Padma Shri posthumously. In the morning, Mr. Kovind had honoured former Union Ministers Arun Jaitley, George Fernandes and Sushma Swaraj with Padma Vibhushan posthumously, along with classical singer Pandit Channulal Mishra. Badminton player P.V. Sindhu received Padma Bhushan.
Kumari P.V. Sindhu, Khel Badminton.
Prominent personalities who were given Padma Shri in the morning include singer Adnan Sami, former head scientist of ICMR Dr. Raman Ganga Khedkar, actress Kangana Ranaut, environmentalist Himmat Ram Bhambu, veteran theatre and television artist Sarita Joshi, and captain of the women's hockey team Rani Rampal.
Sushri Rani, Khel Hockey.
Nishit Kumar for AIR News, Delhi.
Google honored Indian cell biologist Dr. Kamal Ranadive on her 104th birth anniversary on Monday. Dr. Kamal Ranadive is best known for her groundbreaking cancer research and devotion to creating a more equitable society through science and education. In the ICC Men's T20 World Cup, India beat Namibia by 9 wickets at the International Cricket Stadium in Dubai on Monday. India made 136 for 1 in 15.2 overs after Namibia scored 132 for 8 in 20 overs. Ravindra Jadeja was adjudged player of the match for taking 3 wickets, conceding 16 runs. India won the toss and opted to field in the last league match. India's chances in the tournament officially ended after New Zealand defeated Afghanistan by 8 wickets in Abu Dhabi yesterday. Namibia are also out of the competition after losses at the hands of New Zealand, Pakistan and Afghanistan. All India Radio is broadcasting ball-by-ball commentary of the World Cup matches.
India's National Disaster Management Authority, Ndrf, has pre-deployed its 4 teams in Tamil Nadu on the State Commissioner for Revenue Administration's request following the alert issued by the IMD regarding the low pressure in the Bay of Bengal. Talking to AIR News, Ndrf DG S.N. Pradhan said that 1 team each has been deployed in Thiruvallur and Chengalpattu district and 2 teams in Madurai district. Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Sunday spoke to Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin and discussed the situation in the wake of heavy rainfall in parts of the state. Mr. Modi assured all possible support from the centre in rescue and relief work. He prayed for everyone's well-being and safety.
Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Solo News says new US envoy for Afghanistan starts trip to Europe, Asia. Sputnik News quotes Sergei Lavrov to say NATO drills in Black Sea aim to contain Russia. Khalij Times reports Kuwaiti government resigns, possibly helping to end political standoff. Financial Times writes Tesla shares slide after Elon Musk's Twitter poll backs stake sale.
And now a quick look at the headlines once again. Basic countries decry the lack of a serious approach to climate finance at COP26. Delhi Regional Security Dialogue on Afghanistan to be held on Wednesday. China and Pakistan will not attend the NSA level talks. WHO and UNICEF kick off polio vaccination campaign in Afghanistan. US reopens land and air borders after 20 months. India's concept of the Indo-Pacific is inclusive in nature, says Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla at the Goa Maritime Conclave. President Ramnath Kovind confers Padma Awards for the year 2020. And in T20 World Cup, India beat Namibia by 9 wickets in Dubai in their last league match. India celebrating the 152nd birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from Iran. With that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.